this is where you start, ladies and gentlemen, and if there are any students of marketing watching this particular module, you'll instantly recognize it as the Ansoff Matrix. He was the greatest strategist that we've ever had. As far as I know, he's still alive and still writing. This is a very simplified version of his matrix. And the way it works, without boring the pants off everybody, is to say you've got your present products or services in your present markets, and whether we like it or not, everybody who's watching this, that is where you live now. That's where you are now. And therefore, it strikes me that the one thing that you should be doing is exploring all of this first, rather than leaping around in the other boxes. So the first thing you would do is you would look at productivity, wouldn't you? You can actually make productivity improvements with the things you sell and the processes by which you sell them, and you can actually make a lot of extra money without doing anything fancy. The other thing is, if you were to break this down into different products for different markets, different segments, quite clearly, in each of these you've got the possibility of either market growth or market share growth. And when you've said those three things, productivity, market growth or market share growth, there is nothing else that you can do in that box at all to grow your sales and profits. And that's where you start. If that is the case, and you cannot grow to the degree to which you need to grow, the next obvious thing to do is to develop new products for your existing markets, isn't it? Because that must be less risky than doing this one, and the history of commerce is replete with cases of companies who took their products into new markets and fell flat on their face. I mean, companies like Walmart, for example, who went into Germany and were voted Germany's worst supermarket for something like 3 years and lost hundreds of millions of dollars because they put their American model straight into the German market. They're trying to do something quite similar with their purchase of Asda in this country, and Tesco is beating them on virtually any dimension that you could think of, purely and simply because all that Walmart seems to have is a low-cost supply chain. And I can tell you, consumers do not buy on price. You will have to believe what I'm saying. If you went to any supermarket and stopped 100 people and said, how much have you paid for your peas, how much have you paid for your beans, how much have you paid, but they would not know. So what makes people think they've got to compete on price is beyond me. And that's different from being in a market where prices are generally coming down. That's a different point I'm making. Companies like Tesco do not have the lowest prices, never have done and never will do. And yet they're the market leader, they're growing, even while we're sitting here, they're growing through clever marketing, through clever segmentation, through understanding their customers and their consumers better. You may not like them, but it's a British company that's doing well, and I admire them. So what I'm saying is that you've got the first box, you've got the second box and the third box. Why anybody would ever do that is really beyond me, unless you really have to. Because what you've got in the Ansoff Matrix are vectors of risk, haven't you? And down in this right-hand corner, you've got extreme risk. It used to be the fads and the fashions in something like the 1960s, but it's all gone now. I mean, that really is risky. Going into a new market with new products is extremely dangerous. Now, if you look at how you do this, I've given you some templates here, and all I'm saying here, ladies and gentlemen, is this is a simple methodology for getting you started, and you will be able, if you freeze the frame, to see what I've said here. The first thing to do is to put your objective in 3 years out, a must objective, not a might, a could or a should, but a must objective. And if you've said you want to be market leader in this market, it's whatever that is. If you say you want to double your turnover, it's whatever that is. These are must objectives that, generally speaking, come from the board. This is your trend or your forecast if you don't do anything different from what you're doing now, and there is always a gap. And so the first obvious things you do is you look at productivity. I haven't given you a complete list here, but look at productivity to see how much you can grow over the next 3 years by improving your productivity. The next thing you do, as I've already said, is you take each of your main products for markets. There are too many boxes on that, but take each of your product for market and look at market growth and market share growth and put that in here. It's called market penetration. And then you do the same for this box here, same for that box there. And if there is still a gap, then the only thing that's left for you to do is diversification or investment, which is either buy another company, license products, etc., franchise products, license products, buy companies, do joint ventures. That is why you will see so much of that happening in the world around us, and that's because companies have tried everything, and the only way they can keep on growing is by actually doing not organic growth, but that kind of growth. Now, there are no other levers in the world you can pull, ladies and gentlemen. I just want to point one other thing to you, and that is that this is for revenue. You then do exactly the same thing for profit. Don't do them together, otherwise you'll end up as a nervous wreck. And I can tell you, you will now, when you've done that, you can present that to the board as a sort of very rough look, lifting your head over the parapet and looking out and saying, look, this is, generally speaking, where we're going to have to put our resources. It's not a strategic plan, is it? But it's a quantitative use of the Ansoff Matrix to explain where you are going to put your best effort. And can I tell you, if you actually said to me that 85% of your future revenue and profits was going to come from that box, I'd sell the shares straight away. Now, why can't you tell the accountants and the board in very simple language how much you're getting from that box, that box, that box, and that box? And I'll just warn you, ladies and gentlemen, if you send me your plan, this is exactly what I would do. I would break your plan down into, first of all, productivity. I would break it down into market penetration, market development, product development. And if I couldn't put revenue and profit in each of these boxes, your plan is useless. Am I right? I mean, again, this isn't rocket science, ladies and gentlemen. Most marketing plans are sort of sophisticated forecasts and budgets, which Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck could do. This is something different, isn't it? I want you to tell me where your revenue and profit is coming from, because I am interested in the riskiness of those. Is it fair that I should be interested in the riskiness of your projected revenues and profits? Of course. Okay. Now, this is the posh version, ladies and gentlemen, of the simple Queen's English questions I posed about 6 slides ago. And again, I don't intend to go through all of this, but I do ask you, those who are watching this, to have a careful look at it. Basically, it works like this, ladies and gentlemen. Down here you've got the process, the managerial process, which looks at goal setting, situation review, strategy formulation, and resource allocation. The output of the process is the actual plan itself. That's what the output is. And then there are some diagnostic tools in marketing that you use to get the output. Now, I've put some financial tools in as well, purely and simply because my experience of working with the best companies in the world, and having been a fast-moving consumer goods company marketing and sales director myself, is that the person you need to work most closely alongside when you're doing world-class marketing plans is the finance director. Because the board are interested in not just the costs, but in the consequences of what you're spending money on. Now, I'm going to go through some of these things here, but mostly I'm going to tell you what goes into the marketing plan. And it will become clear as I go through the rest of this module. But don't worry, ladies and gentlemen, I haven't got much longer to go.